Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
That, as they say, is that. Marvel Comics, let's go ahead and get started. Avengers Assemble! That's right, I am the Uncanny Omar. You're watching Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And it is my absolute pleasure to do the Avengers Comprehensive Reading Order Part 2 in collected editions. We're going to be looking at the years 1996 all the way up until 2015. Lots of books to talk about, so join me. And welcome back, everybody. Now, before going any further, a big thank you to our patrons for voting for this reading order. Every time I do a reading order, I'm about to start a reading order, I do put it on our Patreon for them to vote. And the complete written documentation will be found on our Patreon once the third video is out. And speaking of the third video, I know this was a lot to look at, but I do want to split them up into 3 different parts. So the next video will probably be coming out sometime in November, I hope. But yes, we are looking at part 3 of the reading order of the Avengers in a comprehensive reading order in collected editions format. So we are looking at the years 1996 all the way until 2015. Even though that may not seem like a lot of years, a lot of things happened here, including Avengers kind of becoming the flagship title. Before I go any further, please don't forget to smash that like button. That goes a long way for us here on the channel. Small thing you can do, but it really does mean the world to us. All right, it took me a while to get through reading some of this and refreshing my brain, but here we go. Let's go ahead and start from 1996 with X-Men Avengers Onslaught. All right, Onslaught. Now this story right here has been collected in a series of trade paperbacks, but also the Omnibus is the most comprehensive way of collecting this particular era. This is an X-Men event, but it's also an Avengers event. Matter of fact, it's a Incredible Hulk event, a Captain America, Thor, Iron Man event, because a lot of things are about to change in this particular book. And without going too much into spoilers, I do have to talk about what happens to Earth's Mightiest Heroes during this event and why it creates this thing that we're going to talk about here in a second called Heroes Reborn. And a lot of it has to do with the power of Onslaught. I'm not going to reveal who that is or anything. But pretty much the ramifications of this mainly found in the Avengers Onslaught Marvel Universe is that characters sacrifice themselves to defeat Onslaught and end up, in a way, I guess, deleting themselves or leaving the 616 universe. During this time, the characters like the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, they all go through and decide that the only way to take down Onslaught is to sacrifice themselves. Now, people immediately think, wait a second, that means that they're dead. So during the 616 universe, the characters like the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, are all thought to be dead, including like the Incredible Hulk. Like, Hulk stays here, but Banner goes through this explosion, if you will. What we don't know yet is that they're going to be forming into another universe. So what does that mean? So that happens in Onslaught. That's where Heroes Reborn comes in. So what really happened behind the scenes is Marvel kind of let the original Image creators like Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee take over these books and kind of lease them out for a year. This is collecting the 12 issues. The 13th issue, unfortunately, is not collected because each of the 13 issues, or issue number 13 for Captain America, Avengers, Fantastic Four, and Iron Man, have a crossover with Wildstorm characters, which is why it's not contained in here. But as it turns out, the heroes did survive, and they are now in this world called the Heroes Reborn universe, where they are reimagined by, again, creators like Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee, Brandon Choi, Chap Yep, and eventually Jeff Loeb and James Robinson, Brett Booth. So the heroes are here. It's a little confusing because you'll also see heroes here like that aren't mutants. Will Spertasio doing the Iron Man stuff. I forgot about that. But you're not going to see mutants here at first, and then eventually you're going to see some revelations that, oh, wait, there are mutants here. What is going on? So that's what this is. This is the Heroes Reborn era. So if you ever love Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld's artwork and you want to see what their take on Avengers and Fantastic Four is like, look no further than the original Epic Omnibus. Now, did they stay there? No, not at all. That's where this comes in. The Heroes Reborn, the Return Omnibus. So this is bringing back the characters to the 616 universe. Where were they? How do they come back? Well, I will leave it to you to find out. Now, in their absence, of course, we had different characters kind of take up that empty slot of superheroes. And the characters I'm talking about, which are some of my favorites, are, of course, the Thunderbolts. The Thunderbolts became really popular during this time when the Avengers were gone, when the Fantastic Four were missing. The world needed heroes, and yes, the Thunderbolts stepped up. And then, of course, the world hated mutants even more because of everything they did. This has absolutely everything you need. The Heroes, the Return, or Heroes Reborn, the Return, has been collected in a trade paperback as well, if you just want to get the main part of the story as to how they came back. And then, of course, it relaunched the line of Thor, Fantastic Four, Captain America, Iron Man, and The Avengers by Kurt Busiek and George Perez. If there's ever a mix of classic storytelling with modern flair, it is this book right here. It is my favorite run on Avengers. I grew up reading Uncle Raj's Avengers. That's one of my all-time favorite runs, one that I wish was collected in omnibus format. But it would be a sin not to talk about how phenomenal this run was. So this is officially bringing back the Avengers to the 616 universe. And it is every Avenger at the very beginning fighting against Morgan Le Fay. And what are they going to do with all these Avengers, though? So by the end of the first story arc, it is decided that the new Avengers are going to be more of a smaller, tighter group with having like some reserves. So you have Captain America, and I love this right here because they do this so often. I've talked about that revolving door of the Avengers, that it's always changing the lineup, and it's one of my favorite things about the Avengers. But you get some big hitters right here, right? Like you got Captain America, you've got Thor, you've got Iron Man that will join. Hawkeye will end up joining the team. But to me, you've got classic characters from the West Coast, like Scarlet Witch and Vision and Hawkeye, I already said. But this time, you get Carol Danvers coming in. She's been an Avenger before when she was known as Miss Marvel. Now she's calling herself Warbird. And the two newcomers graduating from the pages of the New Warriors are Marvel Boy, now calling himself Justice, and Firestar. I love that Kurt Busiek did that. Not because I'm the biggest New Warriors fan. I don't think I am. I think that title belongs to Fabian Nicieza. But because it's nice to see character growth. It's nice to see characters evolve. And man, that they ever evolve. So they stepped up here. And the first omnibus actually collects the Avengers Forever. And Avengers Forever, if you've been enjoying everything about the Avengers, is kind of like retconning some of those stories that didn't make any sense. Like, why was Hank Pym doing this thing to Janet Van Dyne? Or for example, The Crossing. It actually retcons The Crossing in a very successful way. And I just thought about this as I'm flipping through here. You've got the phenomenal George Perez that, of course, kicked it off. Gone too soon. But equally, to me, this is my favorite era of Carlos Pacheco. A legend gone way too soon, doing the Avengers Forever maxi series. 12 issues. And you see the importance of somebody like Rick, right? Like he not a hero, not a superhero, but has just been a big ally to everyone, from the Incredible Hulk to Captain America. And now Rick Jones finds himself being the most important character in the Marvel Universe. I love that about this run. And then we get, of course, eventually newer characters joining the team, like Triathlon. We get classic characters coming back to the team. And we get, again, a rotating team. Oh my gosh, this has to be one of my favorite. Well, I know I'm not talking about my favorite run. I've already done an overview of this stuff. I'm talking about the reading order. But when Thor comes knocking at the door and he's like, Ultron, I will have words with thee. Oh, it's such a badass moment. A moment that I wish they had done in the movie. Although they did do a similar scene like this for the movie. So where do you go from here? With Volume 2, of course, of the Omnibus editions. This is collecting the remaining of the run. This also has this Maximum Security issues in here. So Maximum Security was a Marvel event, but more importantly, the Avengers that played a part in it are all collected in here, from Dangerous Planet to the 3-issue miniseries, plus the Ultron Imperative. But this is one of my favorite storylines in here, with the beginning here, with the crossover with the Juggernaut and Spider-Man, and then, of course, later on, with, to me, the greatest Kang story, and that is the Kang Dynasty. Now you have characters coming back, like Patsy Walker, who was, of course, a big Steve Englehart character, and her coming back to the Avengers and joining them. You have a lot of the things that Kurt Busiek did here was kind of play heavy on the things that made the Avengers unique, as Steve Englehart would start writing, and then, of course, Roger Stern. But having this idea that relying heavily on continuity. So you have characters like the Vision who are very complex. And what Busiek did was kind of strip him down of the complexity and simplifying it a little bit. And not in a bad way, doing it in a proper, amazing way. But yes, this run is so damn good. And by the time you get to the Kang Dynasty, it is, to me, a freaking epic. I love that story. So yes, these two books make up my favorite Avengers runs. Look at that cover. I think that's Kieran Dwyer. Yeah, doing the art in here. We also have like Alan Davis. It is a huge, like, big, like summer, like, to me, a summer blockbuster, but done like really proper. So that ends Kurt Busiek's run on Avengers. Where do we go from here? World Trust. So the stuff I'm about to talk about, in the notes, you'll see, if you're looking at the notes on Patreon, this will be collected in omnibus format later. As a matter of fact, it comes out, I think, in December. Hopefully, I'll get my Avengers Reading Order Part 3 done before then. But we are looking at the Geoff Johns. He now takes reins of the Mighty Avengers. And this kicks off with this awesome story where the capital cities of every nation on Earth have just vanished. So the country, of course, calls the Avengers in to investigate what is happening. And you have, again, returning characters. You've got the Falcon playing an important part. You've got She-Hulk coming back to the Avengers. You've got Black Panther coming back to the Avengers. And also, Jack. Yeah, I forgot, like, Jack of Spades and yes, so here's some of the returning Avengers. Eventually, who will end up joining him is a newcomer, and oh man, his art is so good. Then we have, of course, a crossover. So again, Geoff Johns. It's crazy that we had Geoff Johns for a while. We have Alan Davis, Gary Frank, and Ivan Reis. Now, Gary Frank and Geoff Johns went on to work on Superman. They have probably one of my favorite Superman stories, and that's the Brainiac story. And then, of course, Ivan Reis working on Green Lantern with Geoff Johns. So it's really cool to see him doing some of this early stuff. Alan Davis supplying the artwork here for the crossover between Thor and Iron Man and the Avengers. So again, we have those key players, but things are always changing for the Avengers. Here we have Red Zone, probably top 10 Avengers story. And we'll have a newcomer here. And this is Ivan Reis focusing on the Falcon. But the newcomer, his name is Olivier Coipel. And he had done work for DC Comics, but this is kind of like the art that kind of put his name on the map for a lot of people. It was just unique. It kind of reminded us of Jim Chung. And there's your key players right here. I love his design of Scarlet Witch too. But this is the Red Zone. This is something that is striking fear around the world. And there's a chemical agent that has been released over, it's starting in Mount Rushmore, and it's spreading through the entire countryside. And so it's a terrorist attack here on the United States, and it has one of the most badass moments by the Black Panther. And during this time, it's still Peter Gyrich that's kind of heading the Avengers, kind of like he did in Kurt Busiek's run, and before that, in the classic Marvel era, or the classic Avengers era. And again, Olivier Coipel doing the art. And that takes us to, because this is still Geoff Johns, and that takes us to Avengers Volume 3, The Search for She-Hulk. This is why I love doing reading orders, because it gets really confusing. Now we have Geoff Johns teaming up with an artist that he also worked on when he was working at the Distinguished Competition, and that is Scott Collins, who did a lot of artwork for him on The Flash. So yes, this is where She-Hulk goes savage, and the Avengers are searching for him, or her. And Jack of Hearts and Scott Lang are helping, because they have, of course, a huge relationship with She-Hulk. And even her cousin gets involved. Again, this stuff will be collected in omnibus format, along with, not written by Geoff Johns, but Chuck Austin now taking over the run. And this has artwork again by Olivier Coipel. I believe this was the 25-cent issue, if I'm not mistaken, like an introductory rate to get you to read Avengers. And this is now, Chuck Austin taking over the run. And we have some newcomers like Lionheart, who was Captain Britain for a while, and also returning characters to the mix. And Sean Chen doing some of this artwork here. And believe this will kick off into a Invaders miniseries, leading into the Invaders miniseries. And then we have Once an Invader, speaking of the Invaders miniseries. I think it's just a one-shot. This is sort of like a reunion of the Invaders, and we have Scott Collins again doing the artwork. And all of this will be collected in that omnibus that comes out later this year. It's the Avengers by Johns and Coipel omnibus. And I'm glad that they're collecting the Chuck Austin stuff, and the Scott Collins stuff, and even the Invader Zero. So no issue left behind. So what happens next? Secret War is what happens next. As Chuck Austin is writing his final issues of Once an Invader, Brian Michael Bendis started writing this mini-series called Secret War. And Secret War, to a lot of people, if you've been paying attention, because he had been named as the new ongoing writer on the Avengers. That's all we knew. Secret War, to us that were reading this as it was coming out, was kind of like your template for the new Avengers team-up. So you saw characters like Wolverine, you saw characters, as a matter of fact, issue number 1 has Spider-Man. You see issue number 2 has Wolverine, and then you see Luke Cage, Captain America. And you're like, this is the new Avengers lineup. I bet this is going to be his new Avengers. You'll see characters like Daredevil. And if you know things about Daredevil and the whole Ronin storyline and the behind the scenes, we were very close. But anyway, this is about arm dealers and a secret war that Nick Fury had, sending his Avengers overseas to a country that they shouldn't have been in. There is an oversized hardcover, a trade paperback. The Omnibus Edition collects the issues of Pulse, which is kind of like the aftermath, and then the secret files of Nick Fury in there too. Welcome to the new era of Avengers. So now we have a new Avengers. The title eventually goes from Avengers to New Avengers with a new number. So for the first time ever, well, outside of Heroes Reborn, and Heroes Return. For the third time ever, we're getting the Avengers renumbered. So this is the I want to say primarily this is the team right here of Captain America, Iron Man, and Sentry, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Luke Cage, Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, and Ronin. So we almost called it, right? We were like, oh, what about Daredevil? So this is the omnibus. This is also collected in oversized hardcovers, which I'm going to show you here in a little bit. We know we're getting a volume 2 of this. This is saying goodbye to the old and hello to the new. So it starts off with a storyline called Avengers Disassembled. And this is where a lot of the things kind of lead into the House of M storyline immediately after this, which of course I have to talk about, because that is an astonishing X-Men and a Avengers crossover. And see, I didn't have that on the video, so people that took a snapshot were like, hey, wait a second, where are you going to put that? But anyway, this is killing off some characters, and there's a huge betrayal, of course, in here. And killing off some classic characters. And then when it is revealed who the villain of the story is, some people were shocked and upset. One of my favorite pieces of art right here from George Perez. This is the issue of Avengers finale, wrapping up that old school era, saying goodbye to the classics, to the people that have passed away. And then what happens to the Avengers? It is also important to note that during this time, you can read Thor Disassembled, and it'll show you what ends up happening to Thor because of Ragnarok. Now, before reading actually, go ahead. This is where Omnis are both a blessing and a curse. You can completely read the first story arc of the New Avengers right here, which kind of showcases who these new characters are going to be. There's a new villain that's putting them at the raft and then eventually taking them to the Savage Land. And this is the formation of the team that we saw on the cover, including the character of the Sentry who just showed up out of nowhere. Now, I will say, after reading the first story arc, before you get to the Sentry, so with issue number 7, I suggest reading House of M, which is the crossover again with the Astonishing X-Men. But it becomes an Avengers and a X-Men story. And then it becomes so big that it becomes a Marvel wide story. So it's another universe that's been created by characters that I will not say, but I'm pretty sure most people probably know who they are. And the entire Marvel universe has been reimagined. It's a fun story. Is it 100% necessary to read? No, not at all. I don't think so. But there is another story that I think is important to read, but we're not quite there yet. Got to talk about the Sentry. So in the second story arc, we get to find out about Bob Reynolds and who he is exactly, and the type of character he's going to be when he joins the Avengers. This is very meta, so meta that even Paul Jenkins makes an appearance through here. So then we get the appearance of Ronan joining the team in this third story arc, and I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but it's important to read House of M to me because there's a storyline called The Collective, which is kind of like the aftermath of House of M and the ramifications of what happens at the end of that issue. Then we have the setup of the Illuminati. Again, very important. The Illuminati miniseries, this is the one-shot, by the way, is collected in the second omnibus. This establishes the idea that perhaps the secret group of characters in the Marvel Universe have been guiding the entirety of the Marvel Universe as by what they seem right. So it is the team of Professor Xavier and Iron Man, Tony Stark, and T'Challa, Black Panther, Namor, Steve Rogers, Captain America, and Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic. And they're the ones that kind of decide what to do. And you'll see, it's a big retcon. Some people love it. Some old school readers are like, this is so stupid, it doesn't even make any sense. But regardless of whether it makes sense or not, it's canon now. And after reading this, or after reading issue number 20, is when I strongly suggest reading Civil War. Now, Civil War is a Marvel event written by Mark Miller and Steve McNiven, doing these phenomenal pencils here. Because the status quo of the Avengers is going to change, especially with one of the biggest things that happens towards the end of this story. And it's not collected in the omnibus because even Mark Miller didn't really care what anybody else was doing with their comics, so he kind of did his own thing and everybody had to kind of write around him. So I can understand why this isn't put in there, but that's the reason why. That's why when people ask for like a Civil War omnibus, it's gonna be by story arcs. There's no way to map it with these issues in between other issues because, yeah, Miller wasn't really interested in what anybody else was writing. He was telling his story, and that's that. Now, one of the most important things that happens here, though, directly leads into this issue right here of Captain America, found in the first omnibus by Ed Brubaker, or the second omnibus, which, if you know the name, you know what happens here. Now, I suggest reading that Captain America issue before reading these, because otherwise these issues that are in here will spoil what happens in Captain America. That's why I have you going back and forth. And I know it's a pain, but that's just something you do with collected editions and, of course, single issues. And that will lead into a new era of Marvel Comics for a while. It's that Dark Reign era of Marvel. And, of course, there's going to be a volume 2 of this, but I don't have that yet. So there is another title that starts off after Civil War and after Captain America 25 and after New Avengers. It's another Avengers title, and that is, of course, The Mighty Avengers. So Avengers was selling so well, New Avengers, that it became the Marvel flagship title. It was outselling books like X-Men for the first time in a long time, and Marvel saw this as, hey, we need to have a second Avengers title. People really like this. And, you know, old school people like me were like, this doesn't feel like Avengers, but it didn't matter. The sales is what matters. So we started off another series with an hot Ultron story from Frank Cho. Brian Michael Bendis writing these stories too. So in here we have the team of Ms. Marvel, back to her name, Wonder Man, Sentry, and other characters too that will end up joining the team. This is the Venom Bomb that later on became a big storyline. Ares, I forgot, ended up joining the team. Spider-Woman and Wasp and Black Widow. That's what this team is. So this is another team of the Avengers. This is done in a classic way type of story right here. But the new Avengers continued and will continue into omnibus format. But I'm going to break that omnibus volume 2 that comes out later this year, actually no, next year, into different reading sessions. So yes, the Avengers volume 4 right here. So read it all the way until the Illuminati. This is collecting the first, or issues 32 to 37, which will take us to Japan. And then, of course, the Hood coming into, I guess, the 616 universe, because he was a character created by Brian K. Vaughan and Kyle Hotz, and fit more into the Marvel Knights type of universe because of that mature content. We've got Luke Cage now leading the team, and we have a newer team here of Peter Parker wearing the black costume again because of things going on in the Spider-Man universe, and then Doctor Strange, Ronan, and Jessica Drew, Iron Fist, and Luke Cage leading them, and then we have the Hood and his new group of villains. And then this also will collect the Illuminati issues right here. So again, this is the hardcover, but that's where I'm suggesting to stop reading. The Illuminati issues definitely are some of the biggest retcons that Bendis did at the Marvel Universe. And it, again, showcases this group of characters that are manipulating the Marvel Universe in the way they see best fits the entire universe. Beautiful artwork here by Jim Chung, by the way. And it goes through things like the Infinity Gauntlet, the Secret Wars, and even the appearance of Marvel Boy, who will become a big key player in another story. Now, after reading those issues of New Avengers and Mighty Avengers, comes another crossover. This is the thing that's not included in Omnibus Volume 2 as of this video. They very well could have added it. I don't know yet. I don't have it, but I did ask to add it. Secret Invasion is not in the New Avengers Omnibus Volume 2, but I feel like it really, really needs to be read, and it can be read after issue 37. Because issue 37 leads directly into the mystery of what Secret Invasion is, and that is the Skrulls taking over a lot of the characters. How long have they been infiltrating humanity? How long have they been pretending to be heroes? Who can you trust? Which I think was the poster at the time. And the crossover will actually involve the New Avengers and the Mighty Avengers. And they can be read in between each issue, but that's almost really a huge task. If it was mapped perfectly, probably in between each issue. I don't have the Secret Invasion Omnibus, by the way. So, it could be mapped that way. And in between each issue of Secret Invasion, you have an issue of Mighty Avengers and New Avengers. So, where do we go from here? Well, I mentioned we got to go back to New Avengers, so this is the New Avengers Secret Invasion tie-in. This focuses on different characters in each issue. So you'll have Echo, you'll have Hawkeye, you'll have Jessica Drew, what happened to her, and back to the regular Avengers stories. But I say go ahead and finish reading this entire book. But it does rely heavily on reading Secret Invasion and what those characters are doing and who was a Skrull and who wasn't. Now, of course, it's not the only issue or the only title that tied heavily into Secret Invasion, because we are also getting the Mighty Avengers. This stuff has been collected in complete collections, by the way, and in trade paperbacks. I just happen to have them in this format. This is now focusing on the group of the Mighty Avengers and how they're dealing with the ramifications of this whole Secret Invasion. And also the return of a big player in the Marvel Universe that we haven't seen for a while. And this isn't a big spoiler or anything because characters come and go. But that is Nick Fury. We haven't seen Nick Fury since he disappeared during the pages of Secret War. And then the return, finally, of Thor. But that doesn't happen until the JMS Thor run. So, now, where do we go from here? If you made it this far into the video, I just want to remind you all to smash that like button, please. It goes a long way for us here on the channel. Small thing you can do, but it does mean the world to us. Back to the New Avengers Omnibus Volume 2, or these stories right here. And I just say you go ahead and wrap it up. Now we're entering this dark era of the Avengers, and it is the Dark Reign era. And this is going to become a very important part of the Marvel Universe. And we have, again, a new team of characters. We have a new Captain America this time around, and that is none other than Bucky Barnes. We've got Mockingbird, and as you read these, you'll find out when these characters came back. And some of them, you're going to be like, wait a second, I remember that character dying. It's comic books. Does anybody stay dead? We used to say Bucky dead. Now I think we're just sticking around to saying Uncle Ben dead. And who knows when that guy will be back. This, again, exploring the supernatural side of the Marvel comics with the inclusion of the Hood. And, of course, other characters like Dr. Voodoo. And teaming up a lot more with the Mighty Avengers through here. And who are these guys? Well, we're going to talk about those guys in a little bit. But first, since you'll be reading this in omnibus format, let's go ahead and wrap up the second Omni with the rest of these issues. Again, this is the Big Hood storyline and the retirement of some characters. And all of this will lead into a storyline called Siege. And it will end this era of the Avengers only to get rebooted again, but not like a DC reboot. A Marvel renumbering, if you will. So, where to next? The oversized hardcover. This is bigger. Why am I not showing this? Because believe it or not, this is actually mapped better. This actually includes the Utopia crossover. So, after Dark Reign, after Civil War, after Secret Invasion, Norman Osborn was given the spotlight in the Marvel Universe, so much so that he was leading the Thunderbolts, and then he decided he is so popular, he can actually take over, perhaps becoming the hero of America and in the world. Very Tommy Lee Jones type of Norman Osborn. So he starts hiring these villains, ex-villains, if you will, like Bullseye and other characters. I think she is the only character here from the Thunderbolts that actually makes it into the Avengers team. And they'll be giving some new code names. So Bullseye will become the character of Hawkeye. You have Venom, who at the time is not really Eddie Brock, but you'll find out by reading the book who he is, who will become Spider-Man. You'll have Decken, Wolverine's son, who will become the new Wolverine. And these will be your new Dark Avengers, as they're called. So you have Captain Marvel, who was once Marvel Boy, Sentry, Miss Marvel, and then, of course, you have the character of Norman Osborn. From a cover is where that original outfit came from. Ares, Dark Wolverine, Hawkeye, and the Amazing Spider-Man. And they will become the Avengers now. So it is a dark time for Marvel Comics. It's almost like we need the heroes to win. But that's what this is. This is the Dark Avengers stories. This, again, has been collected in oversized format, trade paperback format, and now an Epic Collection. And speaking of Epic Collections, that's one thing I didn't really note, was that the New Avengers are also collected in Epic formats. These are the modern era Epic collections. Those still don't have the crossover events like Secret Invasion or House of M or Civil War. And everything is in here. Now, everything is leading to a big, big story. But before we talk about that big story, since we're about halfway through the video, I think here is a quick word from our first sponsor.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltzcomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
We gotta wrap up this Dark Reign thing, so let's go back to the Mighty Avengers. Now, off of the book is Brian Michael Bendis, and we have, stepping in, Dan Slott and Christos Gage. Koi Palm doing a lot of the artwork, and we've got characters like Hercules and Amadeus Cho joining the team. We've got Hank Pym now going as the Wasp, and other characters that you may be familiar with if you have been reading the Avengers for a while, and West Coast Avengers. But that's what this is, and this will, again, wrap up the era of the Dark Reign, where everything is dark, where it feels like the bad guys just keep winning and the good guys can't catch a break, and morphing it into something big, something that the good guys will finally get a break. This does cross over a little bit with the Young Avengers, but again, this is a reading order focusing on the main ship, or the main flagship titles of the Avengers. And yes, I will be talking about Uncanny Avengers, because even though it's not a flagship title, I feel like it needs to be talked about before the big event that kind of wraps up this era, or almost wraps up this era. So, this all leads into a big event called Siege. Now, Siege has been collected in the, what was it? It's the Kieran Gillen and JMS Omnibus, but it wraps up this era of Mighty Avengers, New Avengers, and Dark Avengers with this huge attack by Norman Osborn on Asgard. And that's what happens here. This is Brian Michael Bendis kind of wrapping up his run of this Dark Reign era, where a lot of characters end up dying here. A lot of sacrifices are made. And also, kind of like the reunion of the big three, of Captain America, of Thor, of Iron Man. Even though Thor came back in the pages of something like Secret Invasion. Nick Fury playing a big part with his Secret Warriors, which again, part of the whole Secret Warriors series, which can be picked up in omnibus format now. This also collects, by the way, this is the oversized hardcover, also collecting the New Avengers and Dark Avengers and Mighty Avengers issues. No, actually, it doesn't even collect the Mighty Avengers issues, I don't think. It just collects New Avengers and Dark Avengers. But it does collect the New Avengers finale, which wraps up that era, too. And this is also available in a standard size trade paperback, a hardcover, and a thick trade. Now it's time for the good guys to win, right? Right? Yeah, it is. We're looking at the Heroic Age. I'm surprised we only got one oversized hardcover of this, because now this is going to split up into different series. We have Avengers Prime, the miniseries that kind of kicks it off in the aftermath of Dark Reign. This is like the heroes are starting to win again. Not just for the Avengers, but the entirety of the Marvel Universe. It really feels like, oh, good guys are finally starting to lose. But this will set up the team of Avengers and New Avengers. So we'll have two flagship titles now. We'll have Avengers by Brian Michael Bendis, and we'll have the New Avengers by Brian Michael Bendis. Both of them having a different flair to the way they look, and even the way that they're almost written. Kind of like the way that Mighty Avengers was written. But let's look first at your Avengers team. So your Avengers team is made up of Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Spider-Man, and, oh my gosh, Wolverine. Talk about your power hitters there. So what does that mean for the New Avengers? Who is on that team? Well, Spider-Man and Wolverine again, with Luke Cage, Miss Marvel, and Ben Grimm, the Thing. But you're also going to see characters like Dr. Voodoo and Doctor Strange play a big part through here too. And this hardcover has been collected again across smaller trade paperbacks and standard size hardcovers. I just wanted to show you that it's also collected here with a movie cover. And this era has also been collected in complete collections, by the way. But I love these standard size hardcovers, and I'm sure one day we'll get an omnibus edition of this era. So we have Volume 2, and now we have this big fight with the Red Hulk. So that's what's happening through here. We have the return of the Infinity Gems, as they're known here, instead of the Infinity Stones. And of course, this time around, it's John Romita Jr. drawing these particular issues. And we have these characters playing a huge part. And this, again, is your team. I love the fact that Wolverine and Spider-Man are big into the two teams. There's such power hitters that even Wolverine is still with the X-Men during this time. And then we go to the New Avengers. What are these guys doing? So New Avengers, again, is Brian Michael Bendis, and this time around it's Stuart Eminem, who of course joined him from the pages of Ultimate Spider-Man. We also have some Howard Chaykin in here. And this is another big retcon, but I mean, a lot of people do this type of retcon. We've seen it happen with, recently in Jason Aaron's run of Avengers, with the 1 million BC Avengers, but this is the 1959 Avengers that apparently Nick Fury assembled a team back in 1959 of Namora, Victor Creed, Kraven the Hunter, Dominic Fortune, love to see that character back, Silver Sable, and Ulysses Bloodstone. And their mission was to stop the Red Skull. That's right, of course, because we're talking about 1959, and the Red Skull was really prominent then. And that's what this introduces us to, and we have some beautiful Mike Deodato Jr. artwork here. So why am I going to this? Well, because this omnibus collects a storyline called Fear Itself. This is the Matt Fraction omnibus. And Fear Itself is collected in here. And Fear Itself is a big storyline where, first of all, it starts off with Sin, who's during this time, because of things happening in the pages of Captain America, is the new Red Skull. And we have this character called the Serpent that comes back into the world of not just Thor, but Odin. And weapons are scattered around the world, so they're called the Serpent's Hammers. And it's up to the good guys to try to find them before the bad guys do, because these are the most powerful weapons around. So think of like Mjolnir and a bunch of those scattered around the world. That's what this is. So the good guys have to get to them before the villains do. That's happened through here, but guess what? So do Resurrections. You can get it in a trade paperback that was just recently reprinted. Well, it depends on when you're watching this. It was reprinted about a month ago. Or you could get it in a standard size hardcover, or you could get it in this omnibus. There is no omnibus of Fear Itself. Not yet. Maybe one day. Which takes us to Avengers Fear Itself. This is where you're going to find the Avengers and the New Avengers crossovers. There was the missing issues in Avengers, and you're probably thinking that's why I had this here. So people that have these books already and have them in reading order know that I specifically had this here because these issues were not collected in the ongoing trade paperbacks. They were collected in the complete collections, by the way. But this showcases how the individual teams are dealing with this Fear Itself attack. So you have Captain America, Steve Rogers leading part of the Avengers, and then you have the New Avengers. And then, of course, like I mentioned, Doctor Strange and the character of Dr. Voodoo playing a more important part through here. And you also have Iron Fist. I love his design, that white outfit. And, of course, some of the remains of the Dark Avengers are still a part of all of this. And if you're wondering why is Spider-Man wearing that white outfit, well, that happens actually in the pages of Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman. And this is when Squirrel Girl will end up joining the team, not only acting as a babysitter, but one of the most powerful characters on the team. So let's take it back to the Avengers. This is when I'm suggesting reading this. This is now Daniel Acuna joining Brian Michael Bendis for this era of the Avengers. So his era is about to come to an end after quite a number of years. I mean, we don't see writers stick around books this long anymore. But now we have characters like the Vision and Spider-Woman. We have the return of Norman Osborn, this time around playing with Hydra. And we've got Storm. That's right, she's not just on the cover. Well, no, she's actually, where is she? I know she's on the back. She's not just on the back cover, but she's playing a big important part in here. She actually ends up joining them. We have Captain Marvel, or Marvel Boy, as he's known as during this time. And this is what we're looking at here, are kind of like your Avengers, including Scar, the son of Hulk, and the big fight against Norman Osborn. Now that will lead into the New Avengers, Volume 3. This has already, like I mentioned, mapped in a beautiful reading order in the complete collections. I was just stubborn and didn't rebuy them. If they ever release Omnis, absolutely. Neil Adams actually joining here with this particular issue. Phenomenal Neil Adams at that. And then Mike Deodato Jr. doing the majority of the artwork here, including the fight against the Savage Land. I love this homage right here to, what was it, Spider-Man 101. We've got the Gorgon from the pages of Wolverine and Secret Warriors. And now, more than ever, Squirrel Girl playing a big part here. Now, these new Dark Avengers, this is actually the Thunderbolts. The Thunderbolts were renamed to the Dark Avengers, I think just to boost sales, because they knew the popularity of the Avengers. So that's what this is. Now, all of this is going to lead into another huge event. Avengers versus X-Men Omnibus. Not only is it an important X-Men story, it's an important Avengers story, because this is going to set up the new status quo for the Avengers and X-Men soon to come. More so for the X-Men at first, but the Avengers for sure. So this is the coming of the Phoenix. The Phoenix Force is coming to Earth, and it has his eyes on Hope. The X-Men are protecting Hope because during this time we have utopia, we have mutants living together in peace and harmony. For now. And then the Avengers are like, no, this thing destroyed planets, billions of lives. We're gonna step in and make you give us hope, because we can defend her. So, long story short, everybody gets into a fight. We have the Phoenix Five, and we have some deaths here. But that's what this is. This is very important. And also important because this is where you're gonna find those issues of Avengers and New Avengers that are also collected in those small trade paperbacks, but I have this, so I like it in oversized format. This has ties with Iron Fist and Kung Lu, with the Phoenix, and also the supernatural element that is the Phoenix Force. So if you're a longtime reader of the Phoenix and X-Men, you're probably wondering, wait a second, Phoenix Force coming to Earth? That doesn't make sense. It could come to Earth like that if it wanted to. Yeah, you know, you take liberties sometimes with what you read. Comic books, right? All good things. So here we go with Avengers by Brian Michael Bendis, Volume 5. This is also collecting the Avengers and New Avengers Annual Number 1. So now it's a microverse type of story that Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and Giant Man find themselves on this huge trip to the world of the microverse. And then we get the wrap-up of this particular problem that we've had with Simon Williams, Wonder Man, since the pages of Mighty Avengers. So this is saying goodbye, or at least Brian Michael Bendis saying goodbye to these characters that he's written for years, because he's about to move on to another title, and that title is not New Avengers. It's actually X-Men. He's about to relaunch X-Men with all new X-Men, and then write Uncanny X-Men. But before he does, he wraps up his run here with Avengers and New Avengers. So by now we have these key players. And importantly here is none other than Carol Danvers going as Captain Marvel. We still have the Thing, Iron Fist, Victoria Hand, who comes from Dark Avengers, Mockingbird, Doctor Strange, Wolverine, Daredevil finally joining the team officially. This teams him up with some of his favorite artists that he's worked with over the years on Avengers and New Avengers, and wraps up a lot of the storyline with Dr. Voodoo and Doctor Strange, and of course the Red Hulk. So that's what this does, and it takes us to the next, I guess, era of Avengers. But he can't leave Avengers alone, because not only is he writing X-Men, or All New X-Men and Uncanny X-Men, because he's also writing Guardians of the Galaxy. So why do I have this here? Do you need to read Guardians of the Galaxy to enjoy Avengers by Jonathan Hickman, which we'll talk about here in a little bit? No. But what this has is Avengers Assemble. This has the first 8 issues of Avengers Assemble, which is, again, him saying goodbye in a long way to these characters, and also helps establish the status quo of his ongoing Guardians of the Galaxy. Because at the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy is when you're going to see characters like Iron Man going, hey, you know what? I like space. I'm a bit of a scientist myself. Maybe I can go. So yes, Iron Man, Tony Stark ends up joining the Guardians of the Galaxy, but it all happened in the pages of Avengers Assemble. And Avengers Assemble wasn't just an 8-issue miniseries. It continues into Avengers Assemble's Science Bros. Now we have Kelly Sue DeConnick, Stefano Caselli writing these particular issues. So who are the Science Bros? Well, this is really tying it in heavily with the MCU, and that bromance between Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. That's what this series really kind of turns into. So yes, Tony Stark and Bruce Banner are the Science Bros. So the big guy ends up going missing, so now it's up to the Avengers to try to find out what happened to Bruce Banner in this particular series. And the series continues. Yeah, it goes on past this. And you know what? Brian Michael Bendis can't leave these characters alone. So much so that he actually comes back to these Avengers Assemble stories of 14A and 14U, but also writing the crossover for the Marvel Universe during this year. And it's 2013 now. And that is Age of Ultron. So it's a time travel story where the heroes of the Marvel Universe have lived in fear of this artificial intelligence known as Ultron, and now it's time to travel back in the past. Travel back to the beginning of Ultron when he was created and put a stop to it. Does it mean that characters are going to have to kill good guys? Well, you can find out by reading this. This is also available in trade paperback and in standard size hardcover edition. I just have the oversized hardcover. There is no omnibus of this era either. Now, where do you go from here? To Captain Marvel by Kelly Sue the Conic Omnibus. What? Yes, because there's an actual crossover with Captain Marvel and also, Avenging Spider-Man. So this is collecting issues of Avengers Assemble 16 through 19. That's what's collected in here. So that's why I'm putting it here in reading order, because they're not collected in the trade paperbacks, but it is collected in a trade paperback called The Enemy Within, if you want to go that route instead of getting a whole omnibus. Completely understand that. Now, where to from here? I mentioned his name already, so let's go ahead and start talking about Avengers by Jonathan Hickman. We go back to that era, like Brian Michael Bendis, of collecting Avengers and New Avengers into one book. He helps map his own omnis, so that's why you don't have the covers towards the front, you have them in the back. Now we have this whole Avengers world. We have all these key players like Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, but also characters like Hawkeye, Black Widow, Wolverine, Spider-Woman, and Spider-Man. But what about the backup reserves? So that's what this is. This is helping kind of reshape that into Avengers. New Avengers kind of focuses on the new Illuminati of this era and this upcoming insurgence that's to take place. Now, the things that are collected in here are also the Infinity miniseries, which is the return of Thanos and his Blackguard, if you will. And I forgot to mention, because I cannot find my hardcover, I am missing some things since my move, and one day I'll get around to buying them. But if you want to continue with Avengers Assemble, issues 18 through 20 are in the Infinity Companion hardcover. So during Infinity, you can read the Companion, which also has issues of Captain Marvel and Nova, and also Superior Spider-Man and things like that. But it's a big crossover that you don't need to 100% read, but if you want everything from Avengers Assemble, then definitely get that. But this is where I think this should be read. This is everything Jonathan Hickman has been building since the days of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Secret Warriors and Ultimates and also Fantastic Four. The payoff is going to be something that happens in 2015, but it's very important to me, at least, to actually read these issues. He's teamed up with some phenomenal talent here. And you can tell from the very beginning, like, you have the artwork in here of... Actually, I think, is this... Let me make sure. Yeah, it is Jerome Opeña. Sorry, Dom, you'll have to cut that part where I'm second-guessing myself. Yes, Jerome Opeña right there. I love that I'm an artist right there. Jerome Opeña, and you have Scott Eaton. You've got Lionel Francis Yu doing a lot of the artwork in here. Mike Deodato Jr. And it's his new team. We have a Hyperion that shows up through here. Iron Man gets a new outfit. Thor, Black Widow, Captain America. And again, the New Avengers part of this is all of the Illuminati type of characters. So you have this whole, like, conflict between Namor and Black Panther happening in those very pages. And then the big Infinity storyline, which introduces to Thanos' children, the Black Order. Did I call him the Blackguard earlier? And then, of course, the warning of what will come in this insurgence that's already destroyed worlds, if you will. So where to from here? Let's wrap up Avengers Assemble with The Forgeries of Jealousy. And this is the run by Kelly Sue the Conic, Warren Ellis, and then Matteo Buffagni and Paco Diaz wrapping up this run. So this ties it into the Inhumanity storyline that's going around the Marvel Universe. Do you need to read Inhumanity? Not really. You just need to know that Terrigen Mist has been dropped here on Earth, kind of like the Venom bomb that happened earlier in Brian Michael Bendis' run. But this wraps up the era of Avengers Assemble, and that's why I wanted to go ahead and just talk about it here. Technically, you can read this as you're reading the Avengers by Jonathan Hickman Volume 2, but let's just wrap it up here. And the other thing I want to talk about is Uncanny Avengers. So I said I was only going to talk about the flagship titles, but I feel like Uncanny Avengers, you need to read it to understand, plus it's got gorgeous artwork and great writing by Rick Remender, to understand what will happen in the pages of Axis, which is something I do need to talk about. Now, it does benefit to read Rick Remender's X-Force, because this is kind of a follow-up to that, but then the reading orders just get ridiculous, but that's what happens whenever you have a shared universe. But I feel like you can read the entirety of this omnibus right here, and not be confused, because it's doing its own thing. If these characters that are Avengers and X-Men are doing their own thing. Now, let's go to Avengers by Jonathan Hickman, Omnibus Volume 2. And this is when it gets tricky, because Jonathan Hickman, the way he helps map these books, like all his other books, he doesn't put the covers on here. Because what I want you to do is read issue 24, and then I'm going to show you something else to read. This is now your Avengers world. This is your huge Avengers team. You have characters like Cannonball and Sunspot from the X-Men that have joined the team. You have the Imperial Guard like Smasher joining the team. You've got these cosmic characters like Starbrand, which we've seen before in the Marvel Universe, but this is a different incarnation in Captain Universe. You also have Night Mask joining the team. Shang-Chi, Hyperion, Manifold, Black Widow, Captain Marvel, Spider-Woman, Thor, Falcon, Hulk, Captain America, Iron Man, and Hawkeye. This is going to become your Avengers world, and there is a bit of a time jump in here that gets a little confusing as you're reading here all these stories. So something that I was suggested by a lot of my viewers, and I'm going to suggest you do, is find a copy of the trade paperback of Avengers World. This is a 21-issue maxi series that is written by Nick Spencer, Catherine Eminem, Jonathan Hickman, but it focuses on these characters of the Avengers and just putting the spotlight on each and individual character, because you're going to find out that a lot of these characters started relationships. If you're completely lost in Jonathan Hickman's run, it's like, oh, that's where the baby came from. Oh, that's when they got married. So the time jump all affects everybody. It's easily explained through here. And this is why it's called Avengers World. And it's kind of doing its own thing while the Cabal is rising and you're having the Avengers recruit characters like Doctor Doom to fight off against Morgan Le Fay. But that's what this is. And again, this is available in a complete collection trade paperback. Then you jump back to this to finish this out. So this is the payoff to everything. The incursion is coming, and it will be a huge event. I think at first Jonathan Hickman wanted to put it into his Avengers run, but Marvel was like, no, let's make it a big event. Let's use this time to kind of put things together. And I'll show you what that is here in a little bit. Again, you've got this freaking fight between Black Panther and Namor. That's one of the most iconic fights in the history of Marvel Comics. You've got this awesome bromance between Hyperion and Thor, especially when they're up there in space fighting all these aliens. And again, there was a bit of a time jump, so you might be confused. Also confused as to what's going on with Captain America. Why is he looking old? Well, you can find out by reading the pages of Captain America by Rick Remender. But yes, this is what wraps up the series, but not really. It doesn't quite wrap up the series yet, because we have the Maker, this villain from the Ultimate Universe, that is coming here, and he's about to do something with Doom that is going to change things. But before we talk about that, a couple of other things happen. Let's go ahead and get Original Sin out of the way. Original Sin is a secret. Something's happened to the Watcher, and the status quo of the Marvel Universe is going to change here with this .1 issue. And this is the the Watcher transferring his ability to someone else. That's what this is. This will change the status quo of certain characters in the Marvel Universe for a while. And one in particular that we won't see again, not in the same way that we've been seeing him. But that, to talk about that is a spoiler, and I'd rather people be genuinely surprised. But I do suggest reading it here before we read the big event. And even before you read the big event, let's read the payoff to that Uncanny Avengers. But this is the Avengers X-Men Axis, where the world has been turned upside down. We've got Red Onslaught is now broadcasting these waves of telepathic hate across the globe. So now you have Marvel's greatest characters become, or the heroes become, these villains. And now the villains are the heroes. So it's kind of like an alternate reality type of story, where the switch has been flipped, or the flipped has been switched. Nope, man, I'm running on fumes now. Whoa! Look at that Lionel Francis Yu artwork. Wow, can he deliver? But you have Captain America and Sam Wilson during this time. That's why you saw the older Steve Rogers. And yeah, the Avengers could be the villains now. It could be the good guys. Again, the world has kind of been reimagined, if you will. And this is a big crossover that does affect the Avengers. And I think it benefits to read it here first, before we get to the big event. And you guessed it, the 2015 Secret Wars. Now, this is available in a deluxe edition. It's also available in a trade paperback format. But this is the omnibus that actually has it in the reading order that Jonathan Hickman suggested. And it's very similar to Omnibus Volume 2, with the exception of the fact that Secret Wars is included in here. Omnibus Volume 2 starts with issue 24 of Avengers and issue 13 of New Avengers. This kicks off with issue 35 of Avengers and issue 24 of New Avengers. But it does have the entirety of Secret Wars. And this is everything you need to read, according to Hickman, before you get into Secret Wars. But I strongly suggest reading his run, especially if you've already read Avengers and you're just that invested into the Avengers already. But Secret Wars is where we get this huge crossover, where we take the time to reimagine again the Marvel Universe, the 616 universe, and make them into like little small pocket universes. We get battle worlds through here. Is that important to read? Not really. Is it fun? Absolutely. It's a lot of fun to read those miniseries. This is the big event. This is the incursion. This is everything that has been building up to since the pages of his Ultimate, Secret Warriors, and S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh my gosh, Fantastic Four and Avengers all leads into this. So this is when they decided to make the Ultimate Universe and the 616 Universe kind of one, if you will, as that Ribbage supplying the artwork, and we get Emperor God Doom. And then for a while, we don't get any Fantastic Four comics. So what happens to the Avengers after this, though? Where do you go from this era of the Avengers? Well, that's another story. That will be for part 3. That, as they say, is that. And if you're interested in purchasing some of these books, check out our sponsor here in America, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget, the CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the comprehensive reading order of Earth's Mightiest Heroes, going from long video, going from 1996 until 2015. So part 3 will take us into the modern era. Lots of books, I know, but I had to try to separate them and condense them into 3 different parts. Had a lot of fun doing this, and if I missed anything, by all means, please let me know in the comments down below. Again, the written documentation can be found on our Patreon once the 3rd and final video is out. That's it, everybody. Stay healthy and safe out there. And don't forget to assemble. Does that even make any sense? Much love.